I want you to imagine a scenario. It's Monday morning, the alarm goes off.
Okay.
But instead of checking your email or rushing to the office or hopping on that 9 a.m. Zoom stand-up, you drive to the airport,
Sounds pretty good so far.
right, and you get on a plane to, let's say, a remote cabin in Patagonia,
Hmm.
or maybe a silent monastery in the mountains of Japan.
I mean, sign me up. I am absolutely packing my bags.
Well, here's the catch. There's no Wi-Fi, no cell
Hmm.
service, zero satellite phone access, just total, complete radio silence. And you stay there for 6 solid months.
Okay, that sounds like a dream for most people, but I have a feeling you're about to turn it into a bit of a nightmare.
I am, because here's the question you really have to ask yourself. When you come back 6 months later, tanned, rested, arguably enlightened, is your business bigger than when you left it?
Yeah.
Is it the exact same size, or does it simply not exist anymore?
That is the famous 6-month test. And honestly, for the vast majority of people listening to this, even ones who proudly call themselves CEOs or founders or managing directors, the answer is terrifying.
Because the business just evaporates.
It doesn't just shrink, it completely vanishes.
Because the business is actually just them.
Exactly. If the money stops when you stop showing up, you haven't really built a business. You've built a sophisticated job. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be, both financially and emotionally.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling a concept that is probably going to hurt a little bit, but it's the good kind of hurt, the kind that actually fixes the underlying problem. We are calling it the owner's paradox.
The paradox is simple, but brutal. To build a business that is truly valuable, valuable enough to sell or valuable enough to give you actual literal freedom, you have to design yourself right out of it.
You basically have to become the least important person in the room.
You do, which goes against everything we were taught about entrepreneurship.
Right, because we're always told we need to be the visionary, the grinder, the hustle culture hero who is the first one in the door and the absolute last one to leave.
And that hero mode is exactly what kills your valuation.
So let's look at the map for today's dive. We have combed through a massive stack of research to figure out how to escape this trap.
We've got practitioner frameworks, the classics like Robert Kiyosaki, Michael Gerber, bits of Tim Ferriss's ethos, but we are pairing that with heavy, heavy academic backing.
Yeah, we're bringing in organizational theory, behavioral science, and corporate finance.
Because the mission of this deep dive is to provide a map for moving from founder-dependent to founder-independent, transforming what is essentially a high-stress income stream into a highly sellable asset.
So if you feel like you are trapped in a golden cage of your own making, or if you're just starting out and you want to avoid building that cage in the first place, this is for you. Let's start with the diagnosis.
The trap.
Right. Why is this trap so common? Smart people start businesses to get freedom. So why do they end up working 80 hours a week and terrified to take a weekend off?
To really understand the trap, we have to look at Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. But I want to look at it through a structural lens today, not just a financial one.
Most of you have probably seen this concept. It's the square divided into 4 sections, E, S, B, and I.
Right. E is for employee, S is for self-employed, B is for business owner, and I is for investor.
And most people completely misunderstand the S quadrant.
If they do, let's run through them really quickly. The E quadrant, employee, is simple. You have a job, you trade your time for money. The I quadrant, investor, is where your money has a job.
But the S quadrant, that is the kill zone.
It is the absolute kill zone. This is the freelancer, the consultant, the specialized dentist, the high-end architect.
The mistake people make is thinking that moving from E to S is the ultimate goal. They think, I quit my job, I fired my boss, I am finally free, I can wear my pajamas until noon if I want to.
But structurally, an S quadrant business is just a job where you are simultaneously the boss and the employee.
And usually the boss is a complete tyrant who doesn't pay overtime, and the employee is massively overworked.
That's the reality of it. The lecture notes we studied refer to this as a sophisticated job, because in the S quadrant, you are still just selling specialized time.
If the dentist doesn't drill teeth,
The revenue stops. If the consultant doesn't show up to the workshop, the bank account dries up. In the S quadrant, the owner is the product. The owner is the enterprise.
so you haven't actually bought freedom. You've just bought the right to stress out about your own cash flow directly.
Precisely. Now contrast that with the B quadrant. What makes a B a true business owner different?
I think most people assume it's just about scale, like making more money.
Not necessarily revenue scale, no. It's about structural scale. You can make $1 million a year and still be an S. A B quadrant owner owns a system.
A system. That is the magic word for today.
Think of it like this. An S quadrant owner owns a bicycle. If they stop pedaling, the bike falls over. A B quadrant owner owns a car.
They can just get out of the driver's seat?
They get out, they put a hired driver in the seat, and the car just keeps moving down the road. It is an asset that exists completely outside of their own physical labor.
That distinction is huge because I think a lot of us conflate being busy with building a business. If you're the one pedaling the bike, you aren't building an asset. You are just getting a lot of exercise.
And this leads us directly into that terrifying statistic that gets thrown around everywhere. 90% of small businesses fail.
Oh yeah, the ultimate boogeyman of entrepreneurship.
But it's actually a bit of a myth, or at least it's highly misleading.
What does the actual data say?
If you look at the Small Business Administration data, it shows that about 20% fail in year 1, maybe 50% by year 5.
Okay, that's still high, but it's not 90%.
Right. But here's the critical nuance that the SBA data completely misses. Most businesses don't fail in the sense of bankruptcy and boarded up windows.
They don't explode in a giant ball of fire. They kind of just stall out.
They become the walking dead. They survive. They pay the owner a decent enough salary. They keep the lights on and pay the rent, but they never scale.
They just limp along.
They limp along for 20 years as a high-stress, exhausting job for the founder. That is a massive failure of design, even if the bank account isn't technically empty.
That is a really profound point. We tend to think of failure as going broke, but real failure in this specific context is never getting free.
Exactly. They are permanently trapped in the S quadrant.
So why is it so incredibly hard to make that jump from S to B? Why do we just stay stuck pedaling that bike?
This brings us to the work of Michael Gerber and the E-myth, the entrepreneurial myth. I honestly think this is one of the most important psychological insights in all of business literature.
Break that down for us. What exactly is the myth?
The myth is the mistaken belief that just because you understand the technical work of a business, you automatically understand a business that does that technical work.
Okay, give me a concrete example of that.
Let's take a baker. You love baking bread. You wake up early. You absolutely love the smell of yeast. You make the best sourdough in your entire city.
And all your friends are telling you, you should open a bakery.
Right. So you have what Gerber famously calls an entrepreneurial seizure.
An entrepreneurial seizure. I love that phrasing. It sounds like a moment of temporary insanity.
It basically is. You declare, I am opening a bakery. But here is the massive problem. Baking bread and running a bakery are two completely fundamentally different skill sets.
One is a technical skill.
Yes, kneading the dough, monitoring the oven temperatures, but the other is a structural skill, hiring staff, managing supply chains, doing local marketing, running payroll, negotiating commercial leases.
And just because you are a genius at getting the perfect crust on a sourdough loaf doesn't mean you have any idea how to negotiate a 10-year commercial lease.
In fact, your profound love for the sourdough might actually be your biggest liability.
How so?
Gerber argues that every small business owner is actually 3 distinct personalities, constantly fighting for control inside one body.
Who are the 3?
First, you have the technician. This is the part of you that wants to bake the bread or write the code or treat the patient. The technician lives purely in the present and just loves the work itself.
They just want to put their headphones on and be left alone to do the thing perfectly.
Exactly. Then you have the manager. The manager lives in the past and the present. They crave order and predictability. They want to organize the absolute mess that the technician always makes.
So they are the ones stacking the boxes, filing the receipts, making sure the floor is swept.
Right. And the third personality is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur lives entirely in the future. They are the visionary.
They don't actually care about baking the bread at all, do they?
No. They care about dominating the regional bread market. They were looking at commercial real estate for the next 10 franchise locations.
I can immediately see the conflict here. The entrepreneur wants to open 10 locations. The manager is completely freaking out about the rising cost of payroll and flour. And the technician just wants everyone to shut up so they can focus on the dough.
It is a full-blown civil war in your head. And the problem with most small businesses is the ratio of those personalities. The average founder is 80% technician, 15% manager, and maybe 5% entrepreneur.
They're way too busy mopping the floor to design a self-cleaning floor.
That is the perfect analogy. They are working in the business instead of working on it. And because they are dominated by the technician mindset, they honestly believe nobody else can bake the bread as well as they can.
Which keeps them physically trapped at the oven.
Right. So to get to the B quadrant, you have to drastically flip that ratio. You essentially have to fire the technician inside yourself, or at least heavily demote him.
What's the target ratio?
You need to be 70% entrepreneur, 25% manager, and only 5% technician.
But I want to push back a little bit here on behalf of the listener. Someone listening might be thinking, look, I really like baking bread. That is literally why I started this whole thing. I don't want to be a corporate CEO just staring at spreadsheets all day. Why does any of this matter if I am happy doing the work?
That is a perfectly valid lifestyle choice. Truly. If you want to be an artisan baker, be an artisan baker. But you cannot fool yourself into thinking you are building a business asset. You have a job.
A job you created for yourself.
Yes. And the cost of that choice isn't just about your daily lifestyle. It is about financial valuation. This brings us to section 2 of the Dive the Valuation Science.
Let's talk about the hard numbers. How exactly does the market punish you for insisting on being the technician?
In the world of mergers and acquisitions, M&A businesses are typically valued based on a multiple of their profit. Usually, buyers look at EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Basically, your operational cash flow.
Right. Simply put, your profit times a specific multiplier equals your company's value.
Okay, so let's run a scenario. Let's say you have a business making 2 million euros in EBITDA. That is a very, very healthy business.
It's a huge success story by almost any standard. Now, if that business is founder independent, meaning you have a solid management team, documented systems, and the revenue flows smoothly without you, a buyer might pay a 7x multiple for it.
7 times 2 million. That is a 14 million euro check. That is generational wealth.
It's never work again money. Now take the exact same business, same exact revenue, same 2 million euro profit. But in this scenario, the customers only want to talk to you. You hold all the key supplier relationships. You make all the daily decisions. If you aren't in the office, the staff literally doesn't know what to do next.
A buyer looks at that and sees a massive red flag.
They see immense risk because if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, or if you just decide you are tired and want to quit, the business dies. So they heavily discount the multiple.
How much of a founder discount are we talking about here?
It's drastic. They might only offer a 3 or maybe a 3.5 multiple, so now your business is worth 7 million euros instead of 14.
You just lost 7 million euros.
You lost 7 million euros simply because you refused to let go of the daily operations. That is the literal quantified price tag on your ego. That is the cost of saying, nobody can do it like me.
That is staggering. But it actually gets worse than just a lower sale price, doesn't it? Even if you swallow your pride and accept the 7 million, you still aren't actually free.
No, you aren't. And this is what we call the earnout trap. If you are entirely essential to the functioning of the business, no buyer in their right mind is going to hand you a check and let you walk away on day one.
They need to protect their investment.
Right. They're going to force you to stay. They will structure the deal with an earnout. So you might get 60% of that money upfront, but the remaining 40% is contingent on you staying on as an employee for 3 to 5 years.
The classic golden handcuffs.
Exactly. And you usually have to hit very aggressive growth targets during that time just to get the rest of the money you thought you'd already earned.
So let's trace this nightmare out. You sell your business because you want freedom. But instead, you end up working for a private equity firm, sitting in your own former office, answering to some 28-year-old MBA who is questioning your marketing budget.
While you frantically try to hit their target so you don't lose the rest of your payout, it is a very special kind of hell. You become a highly paid, utterly miserable employee in the house you built.
This connects directly to Warren Buffett's philosophy, right? We always look to the Oracle of Omaha in these finance deep dives. What is his specific take on this?
If you read Buffett's annual shareholder letters, he actually publishes a very specific checklist for buying companies. One of the absolute top criteria on his list is management in place.
He doesn't want to buy a fixer-upper.
Not at all. Buffett is a capital allocator. He has zero interest in personally running a candy factory or managing an insurance firm. He wants to buy a machine that is already humming perfectly.
So if the machine needs the founder to stand there and turn the crank every day, Buffett just walks away.
He won't even look at it. And this ties deeply into his famous concept of the economic moat.
The moat being the competitive advantage that protects your profits from competitors.
Right. If the moat is you Your charm, your personal network, your unique brilliance, that is a terrible moat.
It's a moat that dries up completely if you get the flu.
Exactly. It is narrow and it is fragile. A real moat, a powerful brand identity, high switching costs for customers, or network effects, that moat exists completely independently of whoever happens to be sitting in the CEO chair.
McDonald's has a moat. It really doesn't matter who the CEO of McDonald's is today. Millions of people are still going to buy Big Macs for lunch.
So Buffett is basically the ultimate B quadrant investor. He is strictly looking for assets where the owner's paradox has already been solved by the founders. He is buying the system, never the person.
Okay, the diagnosis is clear. We know why we get trapped by the technician mindset. We know the cost millions of dollars in lost valuation and those miserable golden handcuffs. Now we need the structural solution. How do we actually build this B quadrant system?
The sources consistently point us toward one major organizational archetype, the franchise.
Now, I can immediately hear people groaning at that word. They're thinking, I run a boutique creative agency or I run a high-end custom software firm. I do not want to be McDonald's.
And that is a fair reaction.
Hmm.
But the point here isn't that you literally have to franchise your business and sell territories.
Yeah.
The lesson is that you have to build your business as if you were going to replicate it 5,000 times.
And the patron saint of this approach is Ray Kroc.
Ray Kroc's of McDonald's.
Yeah.
People always quote his famous line, "I'm not in the hamburger business, I'm in the real estate business."
Right, because they bought the land under the restaurants.
Yes, but I think the far more important lesson from Kroc is that he was actually in the systems business. Kroc realized early on that the immense success of McDonald's wasn't because the burgers were the absolute best in the world.
Let's be honest, they aren't gourmet. They're consistent, but no one thinks it's a Michelin star meal.
Consistency is the actual product. He built a structural system where he could take a teenager with zero work experience, zero culinary skill, and by making them follow a rigid, documented process, that teenager could produce the exact same burger in Tokyo as they do in New York.
It all comes down to the operations manual.
The manual is the holy text of the franchise archetype. This is where we cross over into knowledge management theory. We have to make the very clear distinction between tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge.
Define those for us. What is the difference?
Tacit knowledge is what currently lives inside your head. It is the gut feeling. It's the intuition that says, I just know how to handle this specific angry client because I've done it 100 times over 10 years. It's entrepreneurial muscle memory.
And as long as the knowledge remains tacit, it cannot be transferred to anyone else. You become the permanent bottleneck.
Because nobody else on your team can read your mind.
Right. So what is explicit knowledge?
Explicit knowledge is when you take that gut feeling, that intuition, and you systematically translate it onto paper. It becomes a checklist. It becomes a video tutorial. It becomes a decision tree or a client script. The goal is to entirely drain your brain onto the page.
There is actual academic data backing this up, right? It's not just a nice anecdote about fast food.
There is heavy data. Blair and LaFontaine did a fascinating, rigorous study in 2005 on franchise survival rates versus independent businesses.
And what did they find?
They proved that franchises survive significantly longer than independent small businesses precisely because of this structure. Franchises do not rely on individual genius. They rely on documented process. They essentially export the original entrepreneur's brain into a manual that anyone can follow.
But here is the massive objection I hear constantly from founders, and I'm sure you have heard it too. A founder will say, look, I can't systemize this because my employees just do not care as much as I do. They won't follow the manual unless I'm standing right there watching them.
Yes. The nobody cares like the owner argument. This is where we have to leave the world of hamburgers and manuals and enter the rigorous world of behavioral economics, specifically agency theory.
This is from Jensen and Meckling, 1976. This is a foundational bedrock text in corporate finance.
It absolutely is. They officially defined the principal-agent problem. The principal is the owner of the business. The agent is the employee hired to do the work. The fundamental, inescapable truth of economics is that their incentives are naturally and permanently misaligned.
Break that misalignment down. Why are they fighting each other?
The principal, the owner, wants to maximize the total value of the company. They want long-term growth, efficiency, and profit. The agent, the employee, acting completely rationally, wants to maximize their own personal utility.
Which usually means doing less work for the same pay.
It might mean doing less work. It might mean avoiding any kind of risk so they don't get yelled at or fired. It might mean focusing on flashy tasks that make them look good for their next promotion, rather than tasks that actually make the company money.
So when a founder complains that their employees don't care as much as they do, they aren't just being paranoid or cynical, they are observing basic economic reality.
Correct. They are observing agency costs, the value lost because of that misalignment. But here is the crucial takeaway from Jensen and Meckling. It is not a moral failing on the part of the employee.
They aren't bad people for looking out for themselves.
Not at all. They are simply rational actors operating within a system. The solution for the founder isn't to hover over them and micromanage every keystroke. That is inherently unscalable. The solution is governance.
Now, governance sounds like a word for a Fortune 500 board meeting, not a small marketing agency with 10 people.
In this context, governance just means this. You cannot govern what you cannot measure. Systemization is the required infrastructure of governance.
Because if you have a documented process, a checklist, a standard operating procedure, you can objectively say to the employee, you missed step 3.
Exactly. If you don't have a documented process, it is just your subjective opinion versus their subjective opinion. You say, I think you did a bad job. And they say, well, I think I did a good job.
The manual provides the objective, neutral standard.
Yes. And once you have that objective standard in place, you have to layer in structural incentives. You have to align the agent's selfish interests directly with the principal's interests.
So we are talking about profit sharing here.
Profit sharing, aggressive performance bonuses, actual equity in the company. If the business wins, the employee needs to feel that win in a big way. And if the business loses, the employee needs to feel it too, not just by getting a stern talking to, but in their actual wallet.
That makes sense. But there is a darker fear lurking here when we talk about giving employees the manual and teaching them everything. The competitor and training problem.
Oh, this is a massive psychological block. Founders think, if I teach them everything I know, if I hand them the exact playbook for how this business works, they're just going to quit and open a competing shop right down the street.
Is that a valid fear, practically speaking?
It is very valid. Research by Agarwal and others in 2004 shows that spin-outs are a very real phenomenon in business. Employees frequently leave to start competing firms. In fact, many of the world's greatest companies were started by disgruntled employees who left other great companies.
So what is the counter strategy? Do we just hoard all the knowledge, keep it locked in our head so they can never steal it?
Well, if you do that, you guarantee that you stay in the S quadrant forever. You might successfully protect your secret recipe, but you completely sacrifice your freedom. So you have to accept the risk.
But you can mitigate it.
You mitigate it by creating massive switching costs for your key employees.
You make it incredibly painful for them to leave.
Or, conversely, you make it incredibly, overwhelmingly rewarding for them to stay. This is where vesting equity becomes your best tool.
How does that work in practice?
If a key employee knows that if they just stay for 5 years, they will get a life-changing financial payout or a meaningful partnership stake in the company, the temptation to quit and start a scrappy, underfunded competitor from absolute zero diminishes significantly.
You want to build a golden ladder for them.
Exactly. A golden ladder, not a golden cage. If the financial upside of staying with you is vastly better than the risk-adjusted upside of leaving, rational actors will choose to stay.
So we have the manual, we have the incentives aligned, we have the switching costs. Let's move to section 4 and talk about the actual structure of the team, redesigning the org chart.
This requires a fundamental paradigm shift. You have to move your thinking from a people-centric model to a role-centric model.
What does that look like on the ground? Because most small businesses are definitely built around the people who happen to work there.
In a people-centric business, the founder looks at their current team and says, okay, Maria is really warm and great at talking to people, so let's have Maria handle all the clients. Dave is good with spreadsheets, so Dave does the billing. Sarah's super creative, so she handles the marketing.
That seems completely natural. You are just playing to their individual strengths.
It is natural, but it is structurally fragile. Because now, the role isn't client success manager, the role is simply Maria. If Maria wins the lottery tomorrow and moves to Fiji, your business is in immediate critical danger.
Because you don't actually know what she did all day, how she did it, or who she talked to.
All of that institutional capability leaves the building the second she walks out the door.
So how does a role-centric model fix that fragility?
In a role-centric model, you define the necessary role first. You completely ignore the specific people you currently employ for a moment. You look at the required system, and you say, to function profitably, This machine needs a client success manager seat.
You build the empty seat first.
Yes. You document the responsibilities for that seat, you build the playbook, you define the key performance indicators. Currently, Maria happens to fill that seat, but the seat exists entirely independently of Maria.
So if Maria leaves for Fiji, the seat remains intact. You just pick up the documented playbook and hand it to the next person you hire.
Exactly. I know it sounds a little cold to treat human beings like interchangeable parts, and obviously company culture matters deeply and personality matters, but structurally speaking, this is how you protect the survival of the business.
It reminds me a lot of the bus metaphor from Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. You know, get the right people on the bus.
Yes, but I would actually add a critical addendum to Collins here. You have to meticulously design the bus before you let anyone on.
Most founders do it backwards.
They absolutely do. They hire people they personally like or friends of friends, and then they scramble to try and find something useful for them to do. That is backwards. You design the machine, you define the exact specifications for the cogs or the seats, and then you go out and find the people who fit those exact specifications.
The lecture notes for this dive also bring up Frederick Laloux's work on reinventing organizations, the whole concept of teal organizations.
Right. Laloux talks about the historical evolution of organizational models. He uses colors. Red is power-based, like a street gang or a mafia family. Orange is process-based, like a traditional multinational corporation. And teal is self-managing, like a highly evolved living organism.
And a lot of modern founders, especially in tech, are completely obsessed with being teal. They want no bosses, full autonomy, everyone brings their whole self to work.
It is a beautiful utopian ideal, but the massive insight from our sources is that you cannot skip steps in that evolution. You cannot go from a chaotic red startup where the founder is just the loudest alpha wolf making every decision directly to a spiritual teal collective.
You have to build the orange machine first.
You do. You need rigid process, clear hierarchy, and strict accountability before you can ever hope to transcend them.
You basically need to write the manual before you have the luxury of throwing the manual away.
Exactly. If you try to implement self-management without crystal clear roles and processes already in place, you don't get teal. You just get chaos.
Okay, so structurally, logically, this all makes perfect sense. Document everything, define the roles, align the financial incentives. It sounds like a straightforward checklist. So why doesn't every founder just do it? Why do we see thousands of burned out founders who know they should delegate but just cannot pull the trigger?
Because the ultimate block isn't strategic. It is deeply psychological. This brings us to section 5 of our dive, identity fusion.
I feel like we are entering a therapy session now. Everyone lay down on the couch.
We basically are. Identity fusion is a psychological concept heavily researched by Carden and others. It describes a psychological state where the boundary between the founder's own self-concept and the business completely dissolves.
So they literally think, I am the business and the business is me.
Yes. So stepping back doesn't just feel like a simple change in your job description. It feels like losing a limb.
It feels like an actual amputation of your identity.
It is a profound loss of self. If your entire daily ego is tied up in being the guy who swoops in and solves the crisis, then building a system that prevents the crisis from happening in the first place makes you feel entirely useless.
You make yourself obsolete in your own kingdom.
And the human ego absolutely hates that. The research by Fauchard and Ruber breaks down 3 specific types of founder identities. It is really helpful to listen to these and see which one you resonate with, because each type has a completely different fear holding them back.
Let's hear them. Walk us through the 3 types.
First, you have the Darwinians. These are the classic competitors. They want to win at all costs. They want to dominate the market and crush the competition. Their core fear is that if they delegate, the employees simply won't be sharp enough or aggressive enough.
They worry the employees won't close the big deal. The business will lose its killer edge and just get eaten by rivals.
Right. This is the founder who always says, nobody can sell this product like I can. If I don't personally go to this pitch meeting, we lose the client.
Okay, what is the second type?
The second type is the missionaries. They are driven by a deep cause. They want to save the world or radically change their industry for the better. Their core fear is that employees will eventually sell out the mission.
That the business will lose its soul.
Exactly. They fear that if they step back, the company will just become about maximizing profit and forget the original vision.
They're the ones always saying, the new hires just don't understand the vision like the founding team did.
Yes. And finally, the third type, the communitarians. They focus almost entirely on the group, the internal family of employees. Their deepest fear is that by putting in rigid systems, corporate hierarchy, and objective performance reviews, they will hurt people's feelings.
They don't want to be the bad guy, boss. They just want to be everyone's friend.
That we're a family founder, which, by the way, is arguably the most dangerous trap of all three.
Why is that? Calling your company a family sounds so supportive and nice.
Because a business is fundamentally not a family. It is a professional sports team. In a healthy family, you are loved and supported unconditionally, regardless of your output. In a team, you're there to perform a specific function and win games.
If you treat your business like a family, you can never fire the underperformers.
You can't fire anyone. You can't hold anyone strictly accountable. And eventually, because of that bloat and inefficiency, the business fails. And then everyone loses their job anyway.
So all of this culminates in what the literature calls the delegation paradox.
Yes, the very traits that helped you drag this business into existence, your extreme perfectionism, your obsession with tiny details, your willingness to work 18 hours a day, your need for high control, those are the exact traits that now prevent you from scaling it.
It's the classic, what got you here won't get you there.
It is actually worse than that. Your greatest strengths metastasize into toxic weaknesses. Manfred Kitz de Vries, an incredible organizational psychoanalyst, calls this the neurotic organization.
The neurotic organization.
He observed that companies often end up mirroring the founder's specific psychological dysfunctions.
Oh, wow. So the company literally inherits the founder's personality disorders.
Effectively, yes. If the founder is a highly paranoid control freak, the company culture inevitably becomes secretive, highly bureaucratic, and paralyzed. Everyone is terrified to make a move without permission.
And if the founder is a chaotic visionary type with untreated ADHD,
the organization becomes wildly reactive. They chase every shiny new object, they pivot every week, and they are completely unable to finish long-term projects.
So if you actually want to fix your business operations, you might literally have to go to therapy first.
Or at the very least, you have to perform a brutal identity audit. You have to look in the mirror and ask a very hard question. Which decisions am I making because they are structurally good for the business? And which am I making simply because I need to feel important today?
That is a staggering question. Did I jump into that client meeting because I absolutely had to, or did I do it because I wanted everyone to see me as the hero who saves the day?
It is the only way to break the bottleneck. You have to realize viscerally that your psychological need to be needed is actively destroying the company's value.
Let's shift gears from the heavy psychology back to the pure mechanics of the business. Section 6 of our outline covers a financial engine that seems like an absolute cheat code for founder independence: negative working capital.
It is the holy grail of corporate finance.
Explain working capital first for anyone who might have skipped their Accounting 101 class.
In a normal, traditional business, the cash cycle goes like this. You spend money up front to buy inventory or pay your staff to do the work. You deliver the product or service. And then 30 to 60 days later, the client finally pays your invoice.
So there is a massive gap in time. You are constantly out of pocket.
That gap absolutely sucks cash out of your business. It means that the faster you try to grow and take on new clients, the more cash you burn up front. You are constantly starved for cash, which means you inevitably need outside investors or heavy bank loans just to survive your own growth.
And taking money from investors and banks brings governance, it brings strict rules, it fundamentally reduces your freedom as a founder.
Exactly. You lose control of your own machine. Negative working capital completely flips this dynamic.
How does it flip it? Give us an example.
Think about Amazon or Dell computers. In a negative working capital business, the customer pays you first.
You click buy on Amazon, and they take the money off your credit card instantly.
Instantly. But Amazon doesn't actually pay the supplier of that item for maybe 60 or 90 days. So for those 2 or 3 months, Amazon is sitting on the customer's cash. They're effectively borrowing billions of dollars from their own suppliers at 0% interest.
So in this model, growth actually generates surplus cash.
Correct. The faster they grow, the more free cash they have sitting in their accounts. They are entirely self-financing.
So if a founder can design their business model this way, they never need venture capital.
If your business funds its own rapid growth, you don't need outside capital. You don't need a board of directors breathing down your neck demanding updates. It gives you the ultimate structural freedom to build the system on your own terms.
How does a service business or a consulting firm actually implement this?
Retainers, upfront payments, annual subscriptions, pre-orders. Literally anything where the cash hits your bank account before the labor costs you money. Even demanding 50% upfront on projects can radically shift your math. If you're constantly chasing invoices for 90 days, you will never be free because you will always be begging for your own cash.
But the sources also mention a trap here, especially with modern online businesses like course creators.
Right. If you sell a digital course, it looks like perfect negative working capital. They pay upfront, delivery costs nothing. But you have to account for high refund rates and massive upfront advertising costs to acquire that customer. If you spend $1,000 on Facebook ads today to make $1,000 tomorrow, you aren't actually cash flow positive in a meaningful way.
We are coming into the home stretch here. Section 7, the exit perspective. Even if a listener has zero intention of selling their business today, looking at it through the eyes of a professional buyer is incredibly clarifying.
It is. And specifically, we should look through the eyes of private equity, PE firms. These guys are the apex predators of the business ocean.
And sharks are highly, highly efficient.
They are. When a PE firm buys a mid-sized company, they have a very rigid playbook. They plan to buy it, optimize it, and sell it again in 5 to 7 years for a massive profit. Their absolute first move, almost without exception, is to remove the founder from the critical path of operations.
It's ruthless. Here is your check. No, please get out of the building.
It is purely about risk management. They know they cannot sell the company for top dollar to the next buyer if the whole thing still relies on the original founder's magic. So they will install professional B-quadrant management immediately.
So the logical takeaway for the listener is, if private equity is going to force the systemization anyway, why wouldn't you just do it yourself beforehand and keep the massive value premium?
Exactly. Why let them arbitrage your inefficiency? If you build the independent system, you get the 7x multiple. If they have to come in and build the system, they give you the 3x multiple and they pocket the difference. You fix the system, you keep the extras $7 million.
What about ESOPs? Employee share ownership plans. We hear about these a lot lately as a more ethical or legacy-focused way to exit, selling the company to your own employees.
It is a phenomenal model for preserving your legacy and rewarding your team. But it has a very harsh, unforgiving financial test. To execute an ESOP, the business essentially has to take out a massive loan to buy you, the founder, out of your shares.
And then the business has to generate enough free cash flow to pay back that massive debt.
Right. And it has to generate that cash without you there to help. The ESOP test is the ultimate truth teller. If your business cannot consistently pay for your exit without your active daily labor, you simply haven't built an asset yet.
Because if the founder leaves and revenue dips even 10%, the whole debt structure collapses.
Exactly. The company defaults and everyone loses.
Now, before we wrap this deep dive up, we have to be intellectually honest. We have to look at the other side. The lecture includes a crucial section on the honest risks. We have been aggressively singing the praises of systemization and manuals for an hour. Are there actual downsides to this?
Absolutely. There are very real risks. The biggest one identified in the literature is innovation rigidity. This concept comes directly from Clayton Christensen's masterpiece, The Innovator's Dilemma.
Unpack that for us. Why does systemization block innovation?
Because systems are perfectly designed for extreme efficiency, but they are terrible at adapting to radical change. A highly systemized orange-level business is essentially a machine optimized to do yesterday's work flawlessly.
It naturally resists doing tomorrow's work because that requires breaking the manual.
Exactly. If you've spent 3 years writing a flawless 500-page manual on how to manufacture the world's best horse-drawn buggy whip, and then Henry Ford invents the Model T car, your efficiency absolutely does not matter anymore. You will go bankrupt highly efficiently.
So what is the solution? Does the founder have to stay involved in operations to keep innovating?
No, the founder or the CEO should stay deeply involved in strategy and innovation. You get out of the daily operations entirely, you stop physically shoveling coal in the engine room, and you walk up to the bridge to steer the ship.
You need to be looking at the horizon to spot the icebergs, not staring at the pressure gauges on the boiler.
Exactly. You are permanently moving your time and energy from the technician role to the entrepreneur role.
And there is also the issue of scale, right? The concept of minimum viable scale.
Yes, this is a very practical warning. If you are currently a solo freelancer making 100,000 euros a year, please do not spend the next 6 months trying to build a corporate board of directors and writing a 500-page operations manual.
You are massively over-engineering the problem.
You are building a skyscraper foundation for a small garden shed. The compliance and overhead will crush your tiny profit margin.
So sometimes just staying in the S quadrant is actually the right strategic choice for your current stage.
For a while, yes. If you are very small, stay lean and stay agile. But you must keep the architectural roadmap in your back pocket. You have to consciously know that the ultimate goal is to eventually build the machine, even if you're just pedaling the bicycle today to get cash in the door.
We have covered a truly massive amount of ground today. The 6-month test in Patagonia, Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, the painful valuation gap, Ray Kroc and the franchise code, the principal agent problem, and the deep psychology of letting go.
It is a lot to process. It is a complete paradigm shift.
If we have to distill this entire deep dive down to one core, unforgettable message for the listener, what is it?
It is simply this. The system is the asset.
It is not the shiny product. It is not the clever brand name.
No. The machine that reliably makes the product is the actual asset. The most valuable thing you can possibly build in your lifetime isn't a brilliant technical solution. It is a boring, reliable, perfectly documented machine that produces consistent results without your physical presence. That is what true wealth looks like. Everything else is just a high-paying job with a lot more stress.
So for the listener who is sitting there right now, maybe driving their car or walking the dog, realizing with a pit in their stomach, oh, God, I am the absolute bottleneck in my own company. What is the final thought you want to leave them with?
I would urge you to go back and do that identity audit today. Open your calendar and look at every single meeting you attended in the last week. Look at every minor decision you weighed in on. And ask yourself with total honesty, did I do this because the structural system is broken and needs fixing? Or did I do this because my ego desperately needed to feel important today?
That is a very, very hard question to answer, honestly.
It is. But until you answer it, you will never be free. Stop building a golden cage for yourself. Start building a machine.
That is a perfect place to leave it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take that audit, look at your calendar, and start designing your escape route.
Thanks for having me.